Hello and welcome to the Music GCSE YouTube channel. This video is part of a series on conventions of pop, and in this video we're going to take a look at pop ballads. So what will you learn in this video? We're going to take a look at a brief history of pop ballads, suitable decades for pop ballads, the typical musical features of pop ballads, the technology used, the instruments used, and suitable artists for pop ballads. So let's start by taking a look at a brief history. So the first thing to know is that ballads have been around for a very long time, dating all the way back to the 15th century. Traditional ballads were very long and were used to tell stories. They had lots and lots and lots of verses. A modern pop ballad is still used to tell a story, and the lyrics in a pop ballad are very important and meaningful. Like I just said, a pop ballad is still used to tell a story, and it's the lyrics that get that storytelling across, so the lyrics play a very, very important role in pop ballads. Now, despite ballads being around for a very long time, they are still a part of modern pop music. Our exam will only focus on ballads from the 1970s, 1980s and 1990s, so all of your answers need to relate to ballads from that time period. So now let's take a look at the typical musical features of a ballad, because if ballads come up in your exam, you will most likely get asked to identify some of these features. So firstly, a pop ballad will use sentimental or romantic lyrics. Just like other types of pop music we've looked at, a pop ballad will use a verse and chorus structure. A ballad will have a slow tempo. Sometimes a pop ballad will have a really long instrumental introduction. A pop ballad will use a straight rhythm. It will have 4 beats in a bar, and it will use lots of legato notes. We learnt about legato in a previous video. If you haven't watched that, I'll put a little link at the top of this video so you can click and go and have a look. So as we've already said, your exam will focus on pop ballads from the 1970s, 1980s and 1990s, and by this point in time, pop music had really diversified. There was lots of different types of pop music out there. So there is more than one type of ballad from these eras. You have pop ballads, folk ballads and rock ballads, and the thing that really distinguishes between those is the use of ornamentation. So a pop ballad will use a lot of electronic instruments like synthesizers. A folk ballad will use a lot of acoustic instruments like acoustic guitars, and a rock ballad will have a distorted guitar. We learnt about distorted guitar when we looked at rock anthems. The thing that distinguishes a rock song to a rock ballad is the tempo. A rock song will have a much faster tempo, whereas a rock ballad will have that slow tempo, and it will still use sentimental lyrics. So that's just something to keep in mind when answering questions on pop ballads in your exam. So now let's have a quick look at some of the instrument techniques we'd expect to hear in a pop ballad. So if a pop ballad has a piano, it will often use broken chords. If it has a guitar, it will often use a combination of strummed and picked chords. Vocals will often use lots of melisma and vibrato, and the articulation used will often be legato. Now, I did do a video on what these techniques look and sound like. I'll put another link at the top of the video in the right hand corner, so if you haven't seen that video, make sure you go and watch it. So as music progressed into the 70s, 80s and 90s, so did the use of technology within music. So a pop ballad will most likely use amplification, reverb, which is like an echo effect, a delay, which is another effect which will just repeat that first sound over and over again. If it's a rock ballad, it will use distorted guitar. A pop ballad will sometimes use a synthesizer, which is basically just a keyboard, and it will use a technique called multi-tracking. Multi-tracking is the ability to record on a piece of software where we can layer up our instruments and our parts. If you've ever used software like GarageBand or Soundtrap or anything like that on a computer or an iPad or tablet, then you have used multi-tracking software. And the instruments used within a pop ballad are very similar to the other types of pop music we've already looked at. For instance, a pop ballad will most likely have drums, a bass guitar, a piano. Sometimes the piano plays a really prominent part within a pop ballad. If it doesn't have a piano, then it will usually have a synthesizer. A pop ballad will have a guitar, either an acoustic guitar, an electric guitar, or both. It will have vocals, and remember, the vocals and the lyrics play a really important part of a pop ballad. And a ballad will sometimes have other instrument sections, such as a string section or a brass section. So because the lyrics play such an important part of a pop ballad, let's have a look at some of the singing styles that are most likely to be used. So as already said, the lyrics are very, very important. They help tell the story of the song. The melody used within a pop ballad will usually use a narrow range of notes, just like the other types of pop music that we've already looked at, and some of the vocal techniques will include things like melisma, and the use of melisma will often extend the range of notes used within the melody, falsetto, and glissando. And like I've already mentioned, there is another video already on the channel which will show you what these techniques sound like, so make sure you go and watch that if you haven't already. And the last thing we are going to learn about pop ballads in this video is a suitable artist. Now this is slightly different to the other styles of music we've looked at so far. All the other styles of music we've had to remember one suitable artist. However, pop ballads, they were performed by both male and female artists, so we need to know a female suitable artist and a male suitable artist. So for a female suitable artist, we can remember Whitney Houston. For a male suitable artist, we can remember Elton John. You can name any other artist from the 70s, 80s and 90s who perform ballads. So for instance, if you were to put somebody like Adele or Ed Sheeran, you wouldn't get the mark because they are not from the 70s, 80s or 90s. So now that we've learned all those important facts about pop ballads, why not pause the video here and test yourself with the questions on the screen. If you found this video useful, don't forget to click the thumbs up and give it a like. If you haven't already subscribed, you can do so by clicking on the logo, or click over here to have a look at one of the other videos on the channel. And you can always use the revision resources at the Music GCSE website at www.musicgcse.co.uk.